All right, welcome back, everyone. So the next selection of discussions will be around data collection. So we'll have several coming up. And the first one is Megan O'Boyle from RareX giving us the early results from the Kleefstra Data Collection Program. So Megan.
Hi, everybody. I'm Megan O'Boyle. I'm the patient engagement lead. Joff, can you hear me okay?
I can.
Okay, great. For RareX, which just means that I am the person that works with organizations like yours to get your data collection up and running. My real job is Shannon's mom. Shannon is 21 and has Phelan-McDermid syndrome. We also call it PMS. I didn't name it. Her phenotype is very similar to ones that you're familiar with. She has a genetic cause of autism, ADHD, epilepsy. She is non-speaking. She doesn't feel pain appropriately. She does not sleep unless things are bad. And she has had some catatonia and regression in her later years. I will honestly say that in her 21 years, the first 10, I didn't give a hoot about research. And I'm still not very good about it, but I am blown away by what I've seen today in the few hours that I've been watching. I don't know how long Kleefstra's been identified, but I think it's not 100 years or several decades. And I will tell you, there are rare diseases that have been around for several decades that have not made the progress that you all have and don't have that kind of interest, which is amazing. So you all should be very proud of yourselves and your foundation and your researchers for getting you where you are today. And I have to admit, I'm a little bit jealous. We were identified in 1989 as a syndrome, and we didn't start to collect data until 2010. And it took us 10 years to figure out that we needed to do it better. So my job is to help organizations like yours collect the best data and get it in the hands of all the people that need it as fast and as high quality as possible. So I will start to share my slides. Slides can be boring, and some of what I'm going to show you, you already know. The preliminary data that we've collected in the Kleefstra Syndrome Data Collection Program just reinforces what the phenotype is. So in the questions, that's when it's going to get interesting. So if I go through a symptom slide and you want to know more, I can bring it back up. But I only have a few minutes, and I really want to leave more time for questions from both the families, the researchers, and the clinicians. Jeff, and you can interrupt me if there's a point that you want to make. So later in this deck, I'm going to show you slides like this. Essentially, answers were yes, no, and unsure. And then this one random slide I've chosen has a participant had issues with eyes or vision or ears and hearing. My suspicion is the ears and hearing are ear infections. My own daughter with a similar but different syndrome had ear tubes 3 times. So that's very common in neurodevelopment disorders. The vision issues can be thrombosis or other things. You all are busy, you're tired, and if you're like me, you celebrate if you can get a shower 2 days in a row. So I need you to understand why this is worth your time soon, immediately, but also at least once a year. And one is, all research is great. Some research is limited by the parameters of the institution or the researcher that has been funded. So we're trying to do something that a lot of research can't do immediately, which is return data to you. First, we'll return it to your organization and they'll disseminate it to you. And this is summary data, just like the slide that I just showed you. But wouldn't it be great if you've never met another Kleefstra family to know that your family member is in the 80th percentile? Or wouldn't it be interesting to know that symptom that is causing such disruption in your life is not as common in the other families, that this might be an outlier? So we will return data to you so that you are not left hanging after you answer questions. This is a great way to help identify who would be appropriate for a study. So you have a lot going on based on what I've heard this morning. And it would be fantastic for those researchers to be able to go into RareX's researcher portal and find target patients that would be ideal for their studies, whether it's by location, whether it's by genetics, or whether it's by symptom. And then you will be notified that you may be eligible, and then you can decide whether you want to reach out to the researcher. I'll show you in the next slide the traditional way of getting research data to researchers, and we are going to flip that on its side. RareX will make this data access to researchers around the world in a much easier way than traditionally done. This will also allow you to connect with other organizations or any new organizations that ever come up in the Kleefstra disease, especially if you're out of country. This also lets you update your data, excuse me, your information at any time. My daughter's did a natural history study at NIH. That's great. We go in once a year. We answer lots and lots of assessments that aren't very good for non-speaking people, and then we say goodbye. If she has a new symptom 2 months later or 2 days later, I have to wait until the next appointment. And at some point, the funding will run out on that study, and that will be the end of it. So being able to go in and add changes, whether it's progression or regression, is a huge part of a natural history study. History is the important word in that, is you want to see progression over time of a disease. And that is why we will remind you to come back and update things. We do not own your data. I defined does not own your data. Dr. Kleefstra doesn't own your data. You own and manage the data. You decide how widely or broadly you want your data shared. And hopefully all of this will lead to drug research faster. I just wanted to give you a heads up that on your beautiful website, if you go for new families, newly diagnosed under caregiver community, you'll see join RareX. And when you hit that, you go to this beautiful community community page. You see Kleefstra up in the left-hand corner, one of your beautiful families members. And right here is the Get Started button. And you'll see at the very bottom, I've highlighted the translate button. And it's one of those translations where you click on a flag. This community page is your front door. It will explain to you what the data collection is, why you should participate, and has frequently asked questions. And like I said, you can translate this. But once you hit get started, at the moment, this is in English only. That will not be forever. We will be adding 2 more languages at the beginning of 2023. This has to be global, and it will be global. You actually have a larger disease than many of the diseases that we're working with. We're building this for all 10,000 rare diseases, but we've decided to start our focus in neurodevelopment. So of the 25 groups we've already brought on, you are one of the 23 that is a neurodevelopmental disorder. What do you need to get started? You need a computer, email, and a password. You don't need all your medical records. You don't need a detailed family history. You don't need a lot of time because you don't have to finish this all at once. You can work on it until somebody wakes up, or till the bus comes, and then you can come back. We do say use Google Chrome or Apple Safari. We're definitely showing issues with the other browsers. And although this is designed to work on all mobile technology, phones and tablets and such, we're not crazy about the user experience right now. So I would recommend that you not use them, but use a laptop or a computer. So this is just an example of one of the questions in the very first survey after you have set up your account and your consent. And that is I call it head to toe. Do you have brain issues? Do you have behavior issues? Do you have growth issues? Yes, no, unsure. These are mandatory questions. There's about 24 of them. It covers every system of the body. That was all we had up until this last month. We've added 19 new surveys. So those of you who have already enrolled, you've got lots of surveys waiting for you, and we want you to come back. You will only see a survey, though, if you say yes to a question. So in this dashboard, you'll see in the gray is your completed surveys, and in the blue is your in progress. And this person is working on diagnosis, and down here under level 2, behavior, vision, and growth. These are showing up here because they said yes to something in that first head to toe survey. So here's some results. I'm going to fly through these. So there does not seem to be a high incidence of cancer. And in terms of head, neck, and face, in the question itself, this includes any dysmorphic features. So that may be where the 34% of yes is coming from. So eyes and vision, this is a high incidence. And like I said, in your community, I think it could be thrombosis. Ears and hearing, not surprising if you have a lot of ear infections. Participant has issues with growth, 32%. And I don't know enough about your community. Phelan-McDermid syndrome was considered to have tall patients until we had enough of them. And then we realized it was just happened that the first few families happened to be tall. And that speaks to the fact that you need as many people in a data collection as you can get, because the numbers will show what the true phenotype is. Has the patient had psychiatric issues? Not surprisingly, this is a high number. Cartilage and bone would probably involve orthotics and other needs for correction. No surprise about digestive system, and in lungs and breathing, there may have been some incidents of pneumonia and things like that. For all of these, and I can come back to some of them, the point is, if you said yes to something, you're going to get another survey, a level 2. And that level 2 survey is not going to be, it's going to take you 5 to 15 minutes, and it's still going to be pretty high level. So if you say yes to brain, then you'll have a brain neuro survey. And in that, it may ask you about sleep or seizures. It won't ask you what kind of seizures. And if you say yes to seizures, then in a few months, when the seizure survey comes out, you will then have a more detailed survey. By owning and managing this data, you are able to say how broadly or narrowly you want to share your data. So far in your community, 61% have said, I will share this data de-identified. We don't share any identified data. I want to be very clear with that. I will share my de-identified data with any type of researcher doing any type of research. That could be socioeconomic research. It could be research on ethnicity. The other 39% wants to share their data with health, medical, and biomedical research. Either is fine, and you can go back and change your answer anytime. So far, 79% of Kleefstra syndrome respondents have said that they are willing to share their name and email with any organizations. Again, if iDefine or other organizations have your email, then they can keep you up to date on things like conferences and researchers and things like that. So I'm not going to show you all the demographics, but not surprisingly, because we're still in English, there's 39 in the United States. We've got some in United Kingdom, go Brazil, that's awesome, and Canada and so forth. In all, in our first 10 disease communities, we had answers from 46 countries. This is not surprising at all. I just wanted to show this. This is typical of a lot of rare genetic syndromes, and this has nothing to do with the genetics and everything to do with the socioeconomics of genetic testing and who is given genetic testing. So those of you who have already enrolled, so you followed Jeff's and Julie's call in the previous year and you enrolled, that's fantastic. I just showed you a bunch of charts about what you answered. You need to come back because we have this great new tech platform with lots of improvements and lots of new surveys. So you need to, Jeff will provide this to you all somewhere. Log back in, you'll have some new terms to agree to. You'll have to reset your password and reconsent. Once you do that, you'll have access to all those new surveys. This is what I was saying earlier. The traditional form is a researcher has to know your disease exists. And remember, you're one of 10,000. And as our previous speaker says, you all need to stand out. Then they have to know you have some data, and then they have to request it with all sorts of applications and jump through hoops. Your foundation then has to decide whether they're worthy of getting the data, and then they have to send it. And then the research is done, and who knows what comes of it. Sometimes you find out and sometimes you don't. This all takes a lot of time, money, and effort. RareX is taking lots of diseases and they're all entering through one door, like the one I showed you with the beautiful girl jumping, that community page. But then their data goes to this place. And then the researchers on the right go in and set up an account and provide credentials, and then they can query. And they can query on genetics, on symptoms, or disease. If someone to go into RareX now and query on intellectual disabilities, autism, and epilepsy, they would be getting data from probably 19 of the 25 groups that we currently have in there, or actually probably even more. So this federated data access is going to get more eyes on your data. It also will allow people who have never heard of Kleefstra syndrome, like you were a few years ago, to stumble across your data and maybe realize that this is data that they're interested in. I'm going to stop there just because I want more questions than slides. Jeff, are you manning the chat or do you need me to?
Yes, I just had a question come in that I answered, but you can probably expound on it. It was referencing whether there is a need to come back to the surveys kind of year over year, and is that going to be a functionality? And perhaps you want to kind of, allude to that regarding that.
If you don't do it, it's a snapshot. And a snapshot is nice. You all want history. You want progression of disease. When did things get better? When did things not change? Not changing is really important. Even if nothing has gotten better or worse, you still need to come back. And we at RareX will remind you, but I'm pretty sure Jeff and the rest of the team will remind you also. But you don't have to wait till the 1 year mark. If your child unfortunately starts having seizures or experiences some regression, you log in, you change your answer that was formerly no to a yes, and now you have a new survey on your dashboard. If we come out with a new survey, for instance, a level 3 on seizures, and you don't see our email that says, hey, we got a level 3 on seizure, please come back. When you come back at the year mark, you'll see that new survey is on your dashboard. I can't be more clear about this. This is your opportunity to show data across the life of the disease. And it doesn't have to be once a year, and it doesn't have to be for the 5 years of funding that research usually gets. This is meant to go on and on. And it's only going to be as good and as deep as you all make it. And to our previous speaker's point, the researchers don't want to come shopping if the shelves are empty. So we don't want to publicize that this data is available if people aren't finishing the surveys or they're not enrolled. So I know you don't have a lot of time, and I understand that you are tired of surveys, but this is really critical. This is not a replacement of all of that other cool stuff. This is not instead of Genida. This is not instead of all of those other surveys. This is complementary to it. And hopefully someday in future, when somebody wants to study Kleefstra, you can send them to RareX and say, okay, these people have already answered 60% of your questions, so just ask them your new ones. And that way we're not burdening you. But we are a nonprofit. We're not selling the data to industry or anybody else. Nobody's paying for this data. You all aren't, your organization is not paying to have it collected. We are doing this to get to treatments, and we had to remove the burden on groups like you, and we had to remove the barrier from getting high quality data that regulators and industry need. And these are standardized questionnaires. They're, they won't say, does your Kleefstra child have? Because it's not about just your community. It's about all the similar communities, because that's where the research is going. There's things called bucket trials and basket trials and all sorts of other things where drug trials can go across disease. But this is not just you doing a favor for researchers and industry. I can tell you the first 10 years of my kid's life, I didn't care about research. I didn't think it was going to happen in our lifetime. And it was very overwhelming and confusing. Still overwhelming and confusing, but it's happening now. It's happening faster than we ever thought. And that data that we collected, and I got that aggregate summary, I took it to IEP meetings. I showed my mother-in-law, who didn't think my kid had anything wrong with her. And I got doctors to order tests that they were not likely to order because my child didn't show symptoms. But when I could show the school team or the medical team that there was data, not crazy mother, data, then they listened. And with a lot of research, all of this great research that's happening, it takes years, and then it has to be published. And there's that, it just takes time. It's hard. And so we can't always afford to wait for those publications to get our one-to-one on our IEP. So this is going to give you something. It's also going to educate you about the things that you haven't thought about. We're asking about every system in the body, not just what we think your phenotype is. And I can tell you personally, after 10 years of data, when my daughter started to have catatonic issues because of Phelan-McDermott syndrome, we had zero data because nobody had ever asked about it. So nobody ever studied it and nobody knew about it. So I strongly encourage you, as you can tell, I get very passionate about this. If you ever feel like there's nothing that you can do for your child, this is something you can do. This will change things. Data sounds boring, but it moves things along. And as two speakers ago said, they're working on 2 patients, and that's showing huge progress. But we need data on hundreds or thousands, depending on the size of your disease. Jeff, I'm going to stop there, and you can ask more questions, or I can.
No, I think it's, I love how you speak passionately and just transparently for everybody watching. Megan has been a soundboard for me and a huge assistance as we've launched iDefine. I mean, prior to iDefine, I was touching base with Megan because of the examples and the connections she's made within the rare space. And so she has been guiding us not only from, the industry perspective, but also as a parent, and you can hear that. And so she knows what we're walking, she knows the path that we're taking, and she's here to help us. So just a big thank you. There is one clarifying question about whether the general research and medical research, like what is the difference there? So maybe Megan, that you could answer that real quick.
Sure.
How do we make the data most accessible? Is it for general research, or is it the medical and bio research?
For the type of research that you all want done, either is fine. I am happy to have anybody, including somebody doing, hypothesis building, who's a math major at Stanford and running numbers in the middle of the night. I'm happy for them to see some sort of pattern that nobody's looking for. But there are cultures and ethnic groups that have been burned, and they don't want people doing any research other than medical, and that's fine. The other question that is asked on the next page that you can skip is, I want all research except commercial, which means I want everybody but pharma. And that's your choice. I personally want drug companies to have my child's data. And the final question is, I want the researcher to have had an IRB approval, which means whatever institution they're working for, they've had this ethics review that says this is good data. I mean, this is a good study. That's perfectly fine. I chose not to click that box. Again, I would like to get the data out as broadly as possible. Remember, de-identified data. We're not showing anybody identified data. Your own organization will not see identified data, but they will get this aggregate summary data that they'll get out to you. And that should help you be able to be a better medical advocate, even if you're not interested in research. So it's not just for research. I said, it's for you too. Researchers are excited about this because it's helping them, and industry is excited about this because they want high quality data, but they don't want to have to slow down and go collect it. They'd rather have it done this way. So I encourage you, we'll be collecting genetic reports. You'll be uploading genetic reports in the near future. That's as important as coming back every year. There are so many diseases that look alike that researchers have gotten to the point that if they don't have genetic proof, they can't assume that the person isn't just self-identifying without a real diagnosis. So you will get lots of messaging in a few months about that. But I just want to say you all should be so proud of what your organization and your researchers are accomplishing. It is amazing, and you are way ahead, but that doesn't mean you can slow down. So if you can go raise funds to get more done, that's fantastic. If you can answer surveys, that's, even better or equally better. So if you have any questions, please let Jeff know. But for all of those people that were early adopters, thank you. But only 20% of you have come back. I need all of you to come back and update your account so you can see all those new surveys.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, Megan. And I think there was another question added here that I'll just answer really quick about how many confirmed cases of KS are there. And the direct answer is we don't know. And the only way that we're going to find out is for everybody to raise their hand and participate in these surveys. So there's guesstimates out there right now that actual diagnosed are around 1,000. But there's prevalence. There's the hypothesis that the prevalence of KS might indicate that there could be 250,000 patients out there. But again, the only way for us to really identify is for folks to contribute to these data collection efforts. And just being a competitive person that I am, when we were part of the early adopters and provided that opportunity, I want us to be the #1 condition. If we're the #1 condition in all stripes, in Genida, in Rare X, then that is going to create noise and create visibility for our condition, and people will want to work with us more. We can't underestimate how powerful that is.